The last few days I've been speaking on the teachings of Kapiladev in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. There are actually two Kapiladevs. One is an atheistic Kapila, and he's famous for what is called the Sankhya philosophy. It's one of the 6 darshanas that are famous in India. All these darshanas claim to have the authority of the Vedas, but they have very diverse philosophies, of which Sankhya claims to be coming from the Vedas, but they don't believe in any form of God or even Brahman. They believe in Jiva and Prakriti. So the whole goal is to free the Jiva from Prakriti. That's it. Other philosophies, of course, we have Vaishnavas and Vedanta, we have Supreme Lord like Vishnu and Krishna. But that philosophy of Sankhya is completely atheistic. So the Kapila who appears in the Bhagavatam is not at all the same person, because what he preaches in Bhagavatam is different. And in his teachings start in chapter 20, in the mention he presents the process of Bhakti Yoga as supreme. And then again in chapter 29, he again talks about mixed bhakti, and particular bhakti in different gunas. But he also concludes that pure bhakti is the best. So he has exactly the same conclusion that we find in Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion. Chorus also speaks about yoga and jnana in chapters 26, 27. So it's kind of a mystery in it. And then afterwards, after 29 and 31 and 32, he gets into somewhat karma yoga. So, like Krishna himself, he speaks all sorts of different philosophies, karma, jnana, and yoga. But he also emphasizes the process of bhakti as the ultimate process. So this Kapila is quite different from the other atheistic Kapila. So in the 33rd chapter, that is also made clear. His mother Devahuti asked for teachings, and then Kapiladev began to speak these different subject matters. And at the end, finally, Devahuti begins to praise him with verses like this, talking about how he is in charge of creation, maintenance, and destruction. He is the Lord of all jivas. He has inconceivable energies, and in this way he operates. But also, though Kapila is the Supreme Lord, he also became Devahuti's son. Like Yasoda is the mother of Krishna, or Devaki is the mother of Krishna. So, though she recognizes him as Supreme Lord, she's also surprised that he has such mercy that the Supreme Lord becomes her son. So, at the same time as being a very powerful person, he also has great affection for his devotee. So, in this way, she recognizes him as the Supreme Lord. Yeah, so she glorifies Kapila as Avatar. Oh Lord, you become dependent on my body as a baby, just as you appeared in this material in forms like the boar, that's Varaha, to destroy sin, and to make those who follow your instructions prosperous. You have appeared to teach the path of Jnana and Bhakti to yourself. So, in this way, Devahuti recognizes Kapila as an avatar of the Supreme Lord. So he's not just some sage who preaches atheistic philosophy. He's an avatar of the Lord who presents all sorts of philosophies, including Bhakti. So Devahuti then begins to praise Kapiladev. And the most praiseworthy aspect of Kapiladev is that he presents the process of Bhakti as the supreme process by which Devahuti will get the best benefit. And in the process of bhakti, also, we find that she's glorifying the name. So this is quite significant because often if we read Bhagavad Gita, yes, bhakti to Krishna, worship Krishna, serve Krishna, Mother Yasoda, but it looks as if Nam Sankirtan is not the main process there, as it is very prominently indicated in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But if you take verses like this, then you will see that the name is profusely glorified among all the different processes. So this verse here, just at the beginning of the chapter 33, the last chapter of this canto, it says, by hearing or chanting your name, by offering respects to you, by occasional remembrance of you, even the dog eater immediately becomes qualified for performing the soma sacrifice. Oh Lord, what then to speak of a person who sees you? So by chanting the name or hearing the name of the Lord, a person becomes, and he's a dog eater, which is below the Varnashram system, not even a Sudra, he becomes qualified for performing the Soma sacrifice. So the Soma sacrifice requires very high qualification using Vedic mantras. And generally, it's only a Brahmana who can do that, who's very well trained in the Vedas. But here, Devahuti is saying that the dog eater chants the name. He's got same qualification as a Brahmana. So he has become completely transformed by the process of bhakti, and particularly by chanting the name. So this is a great glorification of the process of bhakti. Swada, mention Swada here. Swadopi Sadhya Savanaya Kalpate. So the Svada becomes immediately qualified for Savana, which means the Soma sacrifice. Swa is a dog. Adam means to eat. So literally means a dog eater. But it actually refers to a whole class of people who are they eat anything more or less. And they don't follow rules and regulations of Varnashram at all. That's what it means. So he becomes immediately qualified for the Soma sacrifice. And he's worshipful as a Brahmana. And it says immediately. Immediately he chants the name. This happens. So this is similar to the verses we have in the seventh canto where Ajamil names his son Narayana, and immediately all of his karmas, past, present, future, disappear. Immediately. And he's not even doing bhakti at all. So, and then we say, well, that sounds very unlikely or impossible. And similarly here, the dog eater, he chants the name of the Lord immediately. He's better than a Brahmana. How is it possible? Even the Brahmana doesn't become qualified unless he studies for 20 years. And he has to be born in a Brahmana family. Here's a person born in a Malacha family. And immediately he's better than a Brahmana. It looks very impossible. So what this means is that the prarabdha karmas have been destroyed. So the word prarabdha refers to the reactions to sinful activities that are going to be experienced. So we have tons of karmic reactions from previous sins, some of which will manifest within this lifetime. Most of them will not. We have infinite karmas waiting for next life, next life, next life, next life. But we have a few karmas which will come up in this lifetime. Even if we fill up our whole life with karmas, still there's tons of karmas for future. So those that are selected for this lifetime and which we begin to experience day to day, year after year, these are called your prarabdha karmas. The ones that haven't been produced are invisible at the moment. We don't know what they are. So generally, it's difficult to counteract these prarabdha karmas. You can try many different things. So through karma yoga and doing punyas, atonements, we can modify to some degree the results. And therefore, that's why people go to the astrologer And then the astrologer will say, worship Swami or this and that, because Swami is afflicting you. So we get a little bit of relief like that. But you cannot really destroy those karmas. In Jnana, he just said that Jnana will destroy all karmas, because if you don't destroy the karmas, you cannot get liberation. So ultimately, the Jnani wants to get liberation, so he has to destroy all karmas by the process of Jnana. But those who practice Jnana say, yes, the process of Jnana Yoga will destroy all your karmas, except the Prarabdha karmas of this lifetime. It's not going to touch that. So whatever you have destined, you have to simply face your karmas. And of course, once you've experienced it, it's finished. So the amount of karmas of this lifetime, Jnana Yoga will not touch. There's no way of escaping those karmas. Karma Yoga can modify your karmas a little bit and give you a little more punya, but still, it won't destroy anything. Now, of course, Jnana will say, yes, we'll destroy all the backload of karmas, which you're not going to experience in this life, or maybe 20 lifetimes from now. It will destroy those, but it's not going to destroy your prarabdha karmas. But in the process of bhakti, as is stated here, your prarabdha karmas will get destroyed. So that's one unique quality of bhakti. What is the prarabdha karma? In this case, the prarabdha karma is somebody is born as a dog eater. That's his karma of this lifetime, and generally cannot be changed. And therefore, the Jnani will say, no, we cannot do anything. You're a dog eater of this lifetime. You have to be a dog eater. Or if you're a Sudra in this lifetime, you simply have to, that's your karma. Or if you're Vaishya. So everybody gets fixed in different varnas or outside the varna, and you can't change that according to Jnana. But in bhakti, we say that you take your devotional service, you chant the holy name, you can destroy your prarabdha karma. And that's what is stated here. The dog eater is no longer a dog eater. Somehow that karma of being a dog eater has disappeared. And he no longer has that birth. Simply by it's immediate, simply by practicing bhakti or chanting the holy name. Very, very so much more powerful process than the process of jnana. Of course, the goal of bhakti is not just to destroy karmas. This is like a side effect. And it happens even if you don't concentrate on it. It just happens, as in the case of Ajamil. He didn't know he was destroying his karmas, but he chanted the name of Narayan and all his karmas got destroyed. So the unique quality of bhakti, one of the unique qualities, is that it does destroy even the prarabdha karmas, which jnana and yoga will not do. And of course, karma yoga will not do. Of course, besides the prarabdha karmas, bhakti will also destroy all the stored up karmas and all the karmas of the future, as in the case of Ajahn. It will also destroy the cause of all of these karmas. The cause of the karmas is your sinful activity, or even your deeds that give you karmas. But what caused those activities? Desires. So the bhakti will also destroy the desires which cause the karmas, both sinful and pious. But then there's another question. Well, why do we have these desires? So scripturally, the cause of your desires is avidya, ignorance. And bhakti will also destroy the ignorance. So in this way, all levels, which finally lead to the experience of suffering in this world, and then behind that, the karma, behind that, the desire, behind that, the ignorance, all get destroyed by the process of bhakti. And in the process of the prarabdha karmas getting destroyed, even the prarabdha karmas get destroyed. So this is a unique quality of bhakti. Yeah. So this is just even in the same thing is stated in the Nectar of Devotion of Rupa Goswami. It is understood that the low qualities of the dog eater is the cause of his disqualification for performing sacrifice. The sin by which he attains such low qualities in his life is called the prarabdha sin. And so he's experiencing this because of some sinful activity, and therefore he's disqualified from performing sacrifices. But the process of bhakti and chanting the name, completely destroys that prarabdha karma. He's no longer a dog eater. So he becomes qualified to perform the sacrifice. So this indicates the very powerful nature of devotional service, and particularly chanting the name. And similarly, we have this next verse, very famous verse also. Aho Bhattasva Joto Gariyan. How astonishing! The outcasts on the tip of whose tongue your name appears becomes a guru. Not only he's freed of his karma, being a dog eater or whatever, he's qualified to be the spiritual leader of everybody else. And that's indicated by the word Gariyan, which means very great. All those who chant your name becoming most respectful have completed all austerities, all sacrifices, all bathing, and all study of the Vedas. So whatever is accomplished by all these other activities is simply accomplished by chanting the name of the Lord. Such is the power of the name. So some interesting facts here. One is, it says here, Jiva Agre, it literally says the name situated on the tip of the tongue. It doesn't say tongue, it says the tip of the tongue. So Vishnu Chakravarti says that it doesn't have to be pronounced fully even, the name of the Lord. You can mispronounce it, half pronounce it, or whatever. That's tip of the tongue. You start to pronounce it a little bit. Even then, the name of the Lord has the power to destroy your prarabdha karmas. So even it's not fully pronounced, and it's only one name, not even many times. Once you chant, partially chant, that is still powerful to destroy all of the karma that causes the suffering of this lifetime. So he's not only qualified to do whatever a brahmana does, he's qualified as the best guru. And of course, then we can say to be a Diksha Guru or Shiksha Guru, whatever. And he's qualified to give the mantra or the name to other people. So this is the quality of chanting the holy name. So we see in Bhagavatam, in this story, in Kapila's teachings, that the name also in Nam Sankirtan is greatly glorified. So it's not that it's just incidentally mentioned, greatly glorified. There is, of course, a little bit of an objection to this. If we say that the prarabdha karma gets destroyed, and here the birth was destroyed, being a dog eater was destroyed, that karma was destroyed. But the very birth, the life, and the death are all indicated by karma. So if all your karma was gone, you would disappear. Because the body wouldn't be here, because the karma for the body would be gone. So that's the argument again, well, that's impossible that your prarabdha karmas can go, because then you would disappear. So the answer to that is that may be so. Technically, it is so. But we see in the case of Ajamil, it is said that past, present, and future karmas were all destroyed instantaneously. But his body remained. So it looks a little bit contradictory. If all his prarabdha karmas were destroyed, he should have disappeared. And here also, his prarabdha karma is destroyed, but he's still there, and he can perform sacrifices. So what does that mean? So what that means is that the karmas are all destroyed. He's not under the force of karmas. Yamaraj cannot touch him. He doesn't get another birth, but the Lord keeps him alive. So that's not under the law of karma. It may look like it's under the law of karma, but it's not. It's under the supreme law. So the Lord keeps these persons alive because he wants to continue the process of bhakti and have bhakti preached in the material world. So he keeps these devotees alive in the material world after they become purified and they become great devotees. So for that purpose, they continue to live in their bodies, even though their karmas are actually destroyed. The other objection, of course, would be, well, yeah, so he's got a body by the will of the Lord, but he still undergoes sickness, he still has to die. And if you go to astrology and predict everything, becomes predictable just as if he's going through his karmas according to astrological predictions. So how is that? And the answer that Baladev Vijayabhusan says is that the Lord also preserves a pattern that looks like karma, even if the karma is destroyed. Since you do have a body, things have to happen to the body in the material world, obviously. So can't this be haphazard? So this under the control of the Lord, but the Lord preserves a pattern that looks like the karma, even though it's under the Supreme Lord. So therefore, it simultaneously looks like karma, but it's not karma. So this is the explanation for that. And anyway, the idea is that the power of bhakti is such, and the power of chanting is such that it destroys all karmas, even the corrupted karmas, which other processes won't even claim to touch. So that is the great glory of Nam Sankirtan particularly. So the other point made in this verse is that everything is already accomplished. So it talks about having been in all holy places, studied all the Vedas, done whatever like that. So whatever a person strives for to get a high position as a Brahmin or whatever is already accomplished simply by chanting the holy name. You've accomplished everything that is possible in the material world. So therefore, such a person is most worthy of respect, more than any other person in the material world. So in this way, we have a glorification of devotional service by Devahuti, particularly of Nam Sankirtan movement. And it's not the only statement like this. So if we go to, let's say, the 5th canto, we'll find a similar statement. Such power is not surprising from persons who have conquered the 6 senses by the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord, since even an outcast becomes immediately free of bondage of karma by chanting the Lord's name once. So again, same statement there. And we'll look in other places in Bhagavad, similar statements. And of course, in other Puranas also there'll be statements. So it's not just Bhagavatam and not just a few statements. We'll find it repeated in different places. So in this way, we should accept the process of Nam Sankirtan as the most glorious process. And we should not think that the words of Scripture are imagination. If we do, then that becomes an offense to the holy name. So that's why that offense is there, because people, they read these inscriptions and say, oh, that doesn't make sense. How can you immediately become a Brahmana when you're a Chandala a second before, and you chant the holy name once, suddenly you're better than a Brahmana? It's not possible. So it looks impossible, and therefore people will say it's exaggeration. It's only praising the name, but it is not really true. But if you do that, then that's an offense. For that purpose, we have the example of Ajamil, mentioned in the Bhagavad particularly. So we get a graphic example of someone who just chanted the name accidentally and immediately his karmas were destroyed. How do we know? Because when he was supposed to die, the Yamadutas couldn't touch him. He had done karmas to get hellish punishment, but there was no hellish punishment. Why? The karmas were not there. So that's just a story to illustrate that it's not exaggeration. The holy name does have such power. So we may not also perceive that the power is there. Ajamil also didn't perceive it. He didn't know. He was afraid of the Yamadutas. But he was surprised, and the Yamadutas were also surprised. They didn't know either. But it's a Vishnu Duta. You can't touch him because it's the order of the Lord. All his karmas are gone. So it was not apparent to anybody. Other people also looking at Ajamil for the rest of his life. Didn't think he was any different. He was the same sinful person, doing the same bad activities. So sometimes the power of the name is also hidden, and it's not. We can't be understand how it is working. It is working. So never underestimate the power of the name, and never consider the statements of the Bhagavatam or other scriptures to be exaggeration when they're glorifying the name of the Lord. If we get glorification of jnana or yoga or karma yoga, etc., it may be exaggeration, and it's admitted that it is exaggeration in other places. So even Krishna does the same. So in chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, he praises karma yoga as the best process. And he tells Arjuna, you're not qualified for it. Do karma yoga, it's the best. You get all your material desires fulfilled. But we also see later on, like in chapter 9, and then Krishna says, if you worship the devatas, that's foolish. You go to Svargalok, it's foolish. It's temporary. But we have statements, even in the Vedas, Karma Kanda, and they will say, you go to Svargaloka, you become eternal. So therefore, you do all these Karma Kanda sacrifices, go to Svargaloka, you become immortal. No more death. Directly stated there in the Vedas themselves. True. But it's exaggeration. Because the same Vedas in the Jnana Kanda and the Brahma Sutras will say, and the Upanishads will say, no, it's not true. You fall. And the same thing is stated by Krishna Bhagavad Gita. You go to Svargaloka, when your karmas are, your punyas are exhausted, you will fall. So therefore, it's not a true state. So sometimes scriptures do exaggerate results. Why? To encourage people. To encourage people to do karma yoga, they'll say all sorts of things which aren't true, just to get them to do it. I think the example is given of a child is sick, child has to take medicine. So then the parents are going to give the medicine, but they know the medicine is not very tasty. So they will disguise it in different ways. They say, this is very sweet or whatever, and they push it down the child's throat. Somehow or other, they'll tempt them somehow to do it, or they'll disguise it in the sugar bowl or something, do something. So often the scriptures will exaggerate things to get people to do them, because doing that is better than doing nothing. So if you worship the devatas to go to Svargaloka, at least you're avoiding sinful activities, you're doing some austerities, you're controlling your senses, you're doing some vratas, etc. So better than nothing. In South India, we have the people there. Many people are attracted to this deity in Kerala, the Ayappa deity, and for some reason, in the last century or so, it's become very popular among people. So we'll find, rickshaw drivers and bus drivers and all sorts of people. They will do vrata. For 1 month, they will stop eating meat and whatever. They become brahmacharis for a month, and they walk down to Sabarimala to have darshan of that deity. So they're doing some sort of vrata in the hopes, they're going to get some great result. So therefore, scriptures sometimes exaggerate things to get the people at least to control their senses and have a little bit of control at least for maybe 1 month or a few weeks of their lives. So exaggeration is there because whatever they give is not ultimate. But with the process of bhakti and chanting, there's no exaggeration because bhakti gives everything. Chanting gives everything. So in Padma Purana, it says the name is like non-different from Krishna, and the name and Krishna are Chintamani. So what is Chintamani? This is the touchstone. Now what does the touchstone do? Whatever you want, it gives. So if you want money, it gives money. If you want car, it gives car. If you want house, it gives house. If you want whatever you can think of, it gives. So the name can do that, and Krishna does that. Why so the Chintamani is because it's the highest. So the highest person can give everything. If you're lower, you cannot give everything. So the Devatas, they give something. They can give you material benefit. They can promote you to Svargaloka. They can give you long lifespan. They cannot give you liberation. They cannot take you to Vaikuntha or Goloka. But Krishna is supreme in the spiritual world. He can give you anything in the material world. He can give you liberation. He can give you Vaikuntha, or he can give you Goloka. He can give everything. So that's Chintamani. Krishna is Chintamani. The name also is Chintamani. Gives everything. So therefore, no exaggeration. Yeah? So in the Puranas, it will say that the name is the best austerity. It is the best study. It is the best vrata. It is the best yoga. It is the best whatever. Everything you can think of. It's the best of all of that. And it's not exaggeration. Of course, the best thing it can give is prema. That's also not exaggeration. So, therefore, the glorification of Bhakti, Krishna, and the holy name are never exaggeration because they can give anything possible. But every other process, no, it may be exaggeration because they cannot give everything. So, therefore, when we read these descriptions of the holy name and the process of Bhakti, we should not think it is some imaginary thing at all. It is very, very true. So at the end of all these, as I said, Kapila taught Bhakti Yoga. He also taught Jnana and Astanga Yoga, and a little bit of Karma Yoga also. But he also indicates that the process to follow actually is the path of Bhakti. And by doing that, you get the highest goal, which is prema. But to do that, you have to do the pure Bhakti, not the mixed Bhakti. So it's already explained mixed Bhakti and Tamagan Bhakti, Rajagan Bhakti, Sattvagan Bhakti. That's not good enough. To get the prema, you have to do the pure Bhakti. So that's actually the conclusion of his teachings when he says this. Devahuti was very fortunate to get all these teachings from her son, who was the Supreme Lord. And therefore, she could absorb those teachings very nicely. We know, of course, that previously she lived in a big palace and had all sorts of luxuries because Kapila, by his mystic power, had supplied, like a Svargaloka for her. But she was also so absorbed in the teachings that she gave all that up immediately. And she followed the instructions and she meditated on Supreme Lord, as was described by Kapiladev, as Supreme Lord with a smiling face. So she did not concentrate on Brahman or anything. She concentrated on the personal form of the Lord. Of course, she also was able to achieve, as it says in this last verse here, Sharmani, because Brahman, Bhagavan, and Paramatma. Why all these things? Because Kapila had taught Jnana and Yoga and Bhakti. So she realized everything. But ultimately, she concentrated on the Bhakti part of it, and whatever she did from the Jnana and the Yoga was to only just support the Bhakti. But by realizing Bhagavat, she realized everything else as well. So that's the perfection that she achieves. Okay, so in this way, she picked out the essence of everything, the essence of the Jnana, the essence of the Yoga, and therefore she could get Brahman and Paramama, but ultimately she got Bhakti. So Kapila was very satisfied, and then he left. He was the son, and then he understood that Devahuti was nearing perfection anyway, and she could attain the Supreme Lord. So that Kapila's job was finished, and so he left. And she was successful. He left, and it's described. He went down to the mouth of the Ganga. There's a place called Ganga Sagar, and that's famous because there's a Kapila Murti there every year. I think in January it is. they have the Sagar Mela, very famous. All the villagers come to that festival, and that's the celebrating Kapila's appearance. So there's the deity there, like that. So he's still there, residing there. So that ends this particular chapter. Okay, any question there?
We're talking about the 10 offenses, and I was just wondering, it's inattention one of the 10 offenses?
It's the Sanskrit is such that you can divide the sentences up a little bit differently sometimes. So therefore, we get sometimes it's included in 10, sometimes it's included as an extra, like that. And then it says 10 offensive. Plus is inattentive, is an offense to be inattentive while chanting. But there actually is a word there that indicates inattention in the Sanskrit, and that is pramada. So pramada, of course, can be madness also, but one of the meanings of pramada is inattention. So that's why that inattention comes up because of that. But sometimes it's taken as part of the other offense or whatever, like imagination or whatever like that, pramada. But you could also take it as a separate item. Of course, we can say, well, everybody's inattentive, therefore we're all offenders. But I think inattention in that sense refers to a conscious attempt not to concentrate. In other words, we deliberately distract our mind to other things because of our great material attraction. So we make no attempt to concentrate at all, in spite of hearing the glories of the name, etc. So then it becomes offensive.
So which statement in Shastra or exaggeration, which statements are fact? Is there a way we can know?
Yeah. Well, all statements about the Supreme Lord and Bhakti in the name are not exaggeration because they give everything. And all statements of other things may be exaggeration. Sometimes they're not. Like Karma Yoga, you can get Swargaloka, but you cannot get liberation. You cannot become immortal, etc. So when it talks something beyond Swargaloka or it attributes Swargaloka to being immortal, then that's an exaggeration. As I said in the Vedas, it also says that you become immortal, but you don't. So therefore, other processes, we have to be careful of just what result is there. In the case of liberation, often they say in liberation you experience the highest bliss, Ananda, and therefore we have words like Brahmananda, the bliss of Brahman. So okay, you get Brahman, we get all bliss. So that's all I want to be happy. You get that. If we analyze happiness and bliss, then we will see that that state of what is called bliss in Brahman is not real bliss. It's simply the absence of karma, the absence of suffering, the absence of ignorance. So that is called bliss. Technically, the state of Brahman will have no qualities. So you cannot be blissful in Brahman at all because Brahman has no qualities. So if blissful is a quality, you cannot have that in Brahman. It's only a state of being. So technically, we also say it's just a negative type of bliss, the absence of all the suffering in the material world. So therefore, that also tends to be an exaggeration. It's not real bliss. So the real bliss is the bliss of experiencing a relationship of affection. So that is rasa in a relationship with Bhagavan.
You say Brahman has no qualities. Isn't that the quality of Brahman to have not a quality?
We have to use words to express things. That's the unfortunate nature for a Brahma body. They have to use the Vedas to express Brahman when it has no qualities. But when we use words, obviously we have to use adjectives and nouns, etc., to describe Brahman. So that also they recognize as a fault. So therefore, even the Vedas are not absolute. So they say that ultimately the Vedas are also illusory. Ultimately, they have to say that.
Brahman, is it if you go there, is it some type of shantaras you're getting or no rasa at all? There's no shantara.
Rasa involves a relationship between the jiva and the Supreme Lord, or the Shakti, like Radha and the Supreme Lord. So there's two persons, and there's a relationship of affection, and that produces all sorts of varieties of bliss. In Brahman, there's no duality. So there's no me and it, or me and something. And the Brahman itself has no form, so it's impossible also to see anything else there because there's no forms and no qualities. So therefore, there's no rasa. So in that sense, no bliss.
What is the experience for?
Consciousness. But consciousness of nothing. No, because then immediately you're conscious of something, then there's another object there. So it's called chinmatra, just consciousness, which is a very static state. Huh? Anesthesia. Well, kind of like that. The deep sleep state also is considered to be like that as well, where there's no perceptions or nothing. It's just a state of being.
So then that because I know that if the jiva who goes there, he'll be frustrated or not.
Well, some people like that state. If they have enough negative feelings for the material world and all the illusions and suffering and whatever like that, it's a very nice state. So a progress above that, if a person is aiming for that, if they get the mercy of a devotee, as in the case of Sukadev, because he was in that state more or less, but he was having a material body, he got the mercy of Vyasadeva. If one gets the mercy of a great devotee or the Lord, one can progress beyond that state and get into devotional service. But the negative quality is that you may still be influenced by that peaceful Brahman state. So then you could get a rasa, but it'd be Shanta rasa. So to describe those people with Shanta rasa, generally they were people like yogis or others who did a lot of vairagya and impersonal cultivation. Then they got the bhakti, but they got the influence of that impersonal stuff on them. So therefore, even with the Lord, when they do develop a rasa, it is rather peaceful rasa. With non-active rasa. Prabhupada is a neutral rasa. So they're not very active in serving the Lord. They recognize the Lord, etc., form of the Lord, etc., but it's very inactive. If they attain that rasa with the Lord, no, that can be perfect.
We sometimes see that even those in the highest ashram, sannyasi ashram, proud of the karma, and they fall from their position. How do we reconcile this?
With the sannyasi? Oh, well, as Lord Chaitanya says, all these varnas and ashrams are external anyway. So one may internally have the full qualification of a sannyasi or whatever, or vanaprastha, but in other cases, they may not internally. So they got the name, but not the full qualification. So in other words, they will still have their anarthas, still have their karmas with them, etc. Ideally, of course, if he is internally qualified and he has the title sannyas, then he would be largely free of the anarthas, free of the karmas, etc. In terms of bhakti, of course, we say that a person destroys all of his karmas through the process of bhakti, even like instantaneously, as the case here, the dog eater. This chants the name once, all his karma's gone. Ajamil not even doing bhakti, it's all his karma is destroyed. As for the devotee, and even in the case of non-devotees and Brahmabas, etc., that immediate effect is there under certain conditions, and that is no offense. If the offenses are there, the effect will not be so immediate. So therefore, if the offense was this life or last life or whatever, and that offense is there, then you won't get such immediate effect. And Ajamil, by his good fortune, I guess, didn't have any offenses, namaparad, in previous life or this life. So therefore, when he chanted the name and named his son Narayan, then all of his karmas got destroyed. But if he had offense, then it wouldn't be so immediate. And maybe Yamaraj could have got him for something.
Maharaj, you were mentioning several shlokas that we come in just by chanting the once of the Lord. How common is it? Is this pretty common? There's so many codes. So this happening is one example.
Well, we do have many people who chant that way. We have like Balaji liquor store or something. Some of the names which are Nama Bas, like this, titles, or people name their children after the Lord, even if they're, they're not so devotional or whatever, and they're getting a lot of Nama Bas. If they had no aparad, then you wouldn't get that effect. If they did have aparad, then there'll be some effect, but slower. But in any case, I say we can't discard that as an exaggeration. But there is that exception that it has to be without the apparatus. Yes. Mm-hmm. Sin? Okay. Yeah. Well, of course, even in the system of karma and whatever, this like there's the case of Arjuna on the battlefield, and then he has to kill people and whatever. So in relation to that, acharyas say that violence in general, yes, don't kill or harm any other living entity. That's the general rule. But then there are exceptional cases. So it's also quoted that if you get attacked, or your family gets attacked, if somebody sets your house on fire, arsonist or whatever like that, then you can use violence, and it's not a sin. And of course, then we have the case of the kshatriya fighting for dharma. It's not a sin. It's a pious activity, even if he has to kill so many people. So therefore, if there are cases where there is violence, but it's not, there's some reason for it. If you're getting attacked by the mosquitoes or whatever, then you have a right to do the violence. In order to live, we do have to commit violence anyway. We have to eat, we have to do whatever, we have to move around. So there's going to be some violence to some creature, whether it's a microbe or whatever, insect or whatever. And of course, there is karmas to many of these things. There is karmas also, but by the process of bhakti, at least, all of that is completely wiped out. Yeah. So the nama bas eventually can get rid of all of these things. So by nama bas, you can actually get liberation. So that would mean that you can destroy the effects, the prarabdha karmas and the aparabdas and all that. And then you can destroy the bija and the avidya also. But that will be slower. Yeah? So it may take some more time to get rid of all of that. But it is said that through nama bas, you could get liberation. But not prema. So to get prema, you have to do pure bhakti.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Going back to the killing of insects. For example, I was asked to do some service in the temple today, sweep and mop, but there were ants in the way, and I stood there wondering, okay, I leave them alone because I don't want to kill them and get the karma. But then I also remember in the Shastra that or maybe from a talk that the government also, whoever's in charge of us, gets a certain percentage of karma. So if I had killed those ants, would the person who asked me to
only following orders? Well, if again, if it's a devotional service, then we get a little exception for that. So we're trying to keep the temple clean or whatever, and the ants are getting all over your boga, then probably that's not good either. So we do have to make some. But the point is, we're not deliberately out there to try to take revenge on all the ants in the world, or whatever like that either. As with Dhruva and the Yakshas or whatever like that, we're not trying to deliberately commit violence. But where there is some interference and some problem for devotional service, then we do have to take action. Yeah.
Thank you.
Understanding the qualities of the
Yeah.
But we might see and other parties' behaviour currently. In which the 10 offences are committing the offence to Vaishnavas who indicate the life propaganda. So how do we make that a correct evaluation of that situation?
Yeah. How do we not commit offense at the same time? How do we recognize that there are faults? Yeah. So for ourselves, of course, we don't consider offense because we're humble than the blade of grass, we're tolerant than the tree, etc. And in regards to others, we also try to see them as devotees, as much as possible. And but then the devotees are going to be in different levels. So therefore, the respect will also be on different levels. And of course, we can't be perfect in our judgment, but at least with the knowledge we get from Scripture, then we can make some sort of standard of who's the best devotee, who's the second, or something like this. And accordingly, we give that respect in relation to that. So some devotees, of course, may be on such a level that they may not actually be devotees, but they're like devotees for material reasons completely, whatever, and not really sacrificing themselves for Krishna. So that's so like we can mentally respect those types of persons. Those who are more serious, then of course we get more respect. They're very serious, and we can associate with them, etc. So depending on the level, in our perception, then we will treat different devotees differently. But we can think of them all as devotees of sorts, because even if they're not devotees, we respect all of the entities. But at the same time, we have to treat them differently according to our judgment of, how much devotion they have. And in certain cases, of course, those faults in the other, what we perceive as a fault in another devotee, if we have doubt about it, then we can ask another person, another devotee, who may have one clearer idea, is it a fault or not a fault or whatever like that. The only problem is come with maybe a very exalted devotee in bhava or prema. So if we see fault there, that becomes a very good offense. But the problem is we can't really judge them at all because their quality, their character is such that it may contradict all of our expectations, which is devotee is. So they may act completely irregular way, and we're so that's not what devotees like. But if they're on prema, then we can't, we really can't judge them.
How do you know?
We don't know. Something very difficult. Therefore, we have to respect everybody, even the non-devotees. We have to give proper respect to everybody. That's mentioned in like Nectar Devotion when it's talking about bhava, that you see these spots on the moon. Moon is nice and bright, and generally in Sanskrit literature they praise the moon as being very beautiful, soothing with its rays, etc. But if we want to be critical, we can look at the moon. That's not so beautiful after all. We see these spots all over it, like this. So if we want to be critical of the person in bhava, we can also find some fault somewhere or other eventually. But we shouldn't do that because we shouldn't understand his exalted state. But then again, we may not know his exalted state because he may be hiding, as is the case of many of these exalted devotees. And there's such that we don't know, like, Jad Bharat or someone like that. It's very difficult to tell what level they're at. Jad Bharat or who's it, Rishabhadev. Yeah.
But the first and the divided position scholarship that is described as very kind. Would we expect like the one sense was saying that
Yeah. Yeah.
and statement something like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of those qualities, yes, like tolerance, compassion, whatever like that. We don't expect these also devotee to be around killing people or something like that, obviously. So yeah, in general, we would expect that. Yeah, but in other aspects, they may do something unpredictable, and can't judge that. Like Nityananda goes into a liquor store, and that's well, he's getting drunk. He's going to preach, but it looks like he's going there to drink. So then we may come to false conclusions about a praying bhakta because we don't know what he's doing, but it may look like he's breaking a regulator principle or something. And so we have to be careful in that case. But generally, the praying bhaktas are not going to be, violent people or whatever like that. They'll have all these qualities of a devotee.
Case of Pandit, he's Pandit, and then his offenses were mitigated and he got mercy of God. So unknowingly, if I'm doing any offenses, I happen to get that not that is the intention, but just want to understand. If someone serves the pure devotee, if they were supposed to get mitigated.
I mean, we commit offenses unintentionally, or unintentional offenses maybe they have some effect, but it's not so serious as intentional effect, where we have animosity involved or deception involved. That becomes a very serious offense. If it is accidental, we don't even know about it, then the person becomes disturbed. There's some effect, but it's not so bad. But then we don't really know how to do that, how to rectify that if we don't even know it exists. The only way we could detect it is by, let's say, a weakening of our devotion. If for no particular reason, our devotion begins to weaken, our attraction to Krishna weakens, then we can survive. Maybe it's some unknown offense. And if that happens, then who did it or whatever, we don't know. So the best solution, maybe if we can't figure out who we offended, is simply to take shelter of the holy name. Because through the holy name, that also relieves us of offenses. If we do know who it is, then we do have to go and approach the person and apologize. And that will also get rid of the offense.
They are coming from spiritual world apart.
Yeah.
In past time. But in the past time, we hear that the bring and the prayer is already
With Vatsalya or something. Yeah. Oh, some things are pastimes only. Huh? That's all. So they may act like they are not on the highest level. No, I don't have prema, or that person doesn't have prema, whatever. But actually, if they're eternal associates of Lord Chaitanya, then they are on that high level, but they're acting in a certain way or they're perceived like that.
The importance of accepting Diksha is very high. Is a process of possible without this step? That is why the power of
Yeah. So Diksha is stressed to some degree, but often we can say that it may be implied when we read, when it says Guru, and then we think it's Diksha Guru, but it may not be Diksha Guru. So, for instance, we'll see many stories in Bhagavatam. So and speaking to so and so, speaking to so and okay, and then they're addressed as Guru, but they may not be Diksha Guru. They're Shiksha Guru. So in the Bhakti Sandarbha there, Rupa Goswami, then he discusses Diksha Guru in relation to Archana, and he also discusses Shiksha Guru. And then in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we also have in the Adi Lila whole description of the Shiksha Guru and Diksha Guru, and they're actually equal, and they get equal respect. So in other words, the potency is the same. Of course, the potency also depends on the level, but technically, both get equal respect, a Shiksha Guru or a Diksha Guru. In other words, they're giving equal spiritual inspiration and Shakti. And often, as I said, in the Bhagavatam, it talks about the Guru, we may interpret it as Diksha Guru, but actually maybe Shiksha Guru. And the statements in the Upanishads talking about, by if you have enough devotion or equal devotion to the Guru as the Supreme Lord, then the scriptures are revealed, or you must go to Guru. Guru eva bigachat. We may think that's Diksha Guru, but actually Shiksha Guru. Jiva Goswami uses all those quotes that we generally quote for Diksha Guru for Shiksha Guru. When he's talking about Shiksha Guru, then he quotes all these verses for Shiksha Guru. So therefore, it may be given prominence by us, but actually in scripture, it is prominence is less and more emphasis given to the Shiksha Guru. Yeah. So Shiksha obviously means teachings. So someone who, of course, everybody can teach, but generally refer to someone who does have great knowledge and through his teachings gives significant teachings by which you can advance nicely. So he provides you inspiration through his teachings. Diksha Guru, in its narrowest definition, is the one who gives you a Diksha mantra that you chant secretly. And it's used for deity worship, which means our second initiation of like Diksha. It is confined to that. And its main function for us is deity worship, because you use that mantra. You become qualified to worship the deity by that. And you use that mantra when you offer the items to Krishna. So that actually is the Diksha. So, but we don't really use that mantra apart from using it in Archana. Mainly we're just chanting Hare Krishna, which is not required Diksha. So the Diksha Guru is not giving you Hare Krishna, actually. He's giving you this other mantra, which we chant 3 times a day and use for daily worship, but it's not our mainstay of sadhana. But traditionally in Pancharatra, that Guru gets emphasized because in Pancharatra, deity worship is the main item and not Harinam. With Lord Chaitanya, we still continue Archana, but Harinam takes prominence. So therefore that the Diksha function becomes less important, but still carried on. So Lord Chaitanya took Diksha, Nishananda took Diksha, except they got mantra. We don't see them really using the mantra much. They're made to do Sankirtan. So the Sankirtan, Nama does not require Diksha at all. It's public, it's not secret. But in order to get prema, you need knowledge. To get the knowledge, you need Shiksha. So we do need a Shiksha Guru at least to, get the prema, even if it's not the Diksha. But traditionally, usually it's a combination of both in our Sampradaya. Usually they get both. It could be Shiksha Guru. Yes. And for us, it could be Prabhupada. Yeah. So Prabhupada's our Shiksha Guru for a lot of devotees. Yeah. So because he's also the founder of ISKCON, that puts him in a special position as a Shiksha Guru also. Like the founder of Sri Sampradaya, one of the founders is like Ramanujacharya. So he's got a very special position. He's not the Diksha Guru for anybody 1,000 years later, but he is definitely the prominent guru in that Sampradaya because he's a Shiksha Guru. And the same with Madhvacharya. Yeah.
I thought Diksha Guru was our spiritual master, if I got that wrong. I thought our Diksha Guru is our spiritual master.
Well, spiritual master is a translation of guru, so that a spiritual master could be a Shiksha Guru or a Diksha Guru. Okay. Spiritual master, it could be either.
It could be both as well.
Yeah, well, obviously the Diksha Guru usually, in ISKCON at least, will be also give some teaching, hopefully. Traditionally, it may be so or may not be so, he may just give the mantra, and that's it. As in the case of Gopakumar and Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he got a mantra from a guru, and the guru disappeared. He didn't even explain what the mantra was, how to use it or anything. He just gave a mantra, he disappeared. So then Gopakumar just started chanting the mantra however he best could. And of course, he advanced by that because of the power of the mantra, but he didn't get any teachings at that particular time. So the Diksha Guru may give teachings, but he's called the Diksha Guru because he gives the mantra, the secret mantra. So in Islam, it's a little confusing because we call the first initiation and we take him as a Diksha Guru, but technically, he only becomes the real Diksha Guru at second initiation.
How do you know Bhakti statements are also exaggeration?
How do we know Bhakti statements are not exaggeration? Well, if we go by the context, like say Bhagavatam and even Bhagavad Gita, where we have different processes mentioned, karma yoga, jnana yoga, stanga yoga, bhakti yoga, and they all get some praise. Nevertheless, it's pointed out that bhakti is the highest. So at the end of, especially at the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita, it says, give up everything, surrender unto me. That's the final statement, more or less. So then bhakti is the supreme process. So then there can be no exaggeration because there's nothing beyond that. And the same in Bhagavatam we see here with the teachings of Kapila and then Devahuti statements. Kapila says bhakti is the final process and it will lead to prema. And then Devahuti is praising this process also. So because it's the highest, then there could be nothing beyond that to praise. So therefore, it cannot be exaggeration.
It's not that the pastime of the Lord is eternal. So they will be continuing the pastime and the universe or that and the jiva takes.
Yeah, like just like Kapila is eternal, and he's the avatar of the Lord. So therefore, his parents or whatever are eternal also. So they have eternal pastimes. Yeah.
Partly to the brain, inadequately or accidentally, is always
Yeah.
the time of year, allows some or go back to God. Get back to Krishna, or Krishna is connected. He chooses for us to come there.
Well, karma is one factor, but even if you destroy all your karmas, that doesn't qualify for the spiritual world. You have that prema. So accidental chanting can destroy your karmas, doesn't give you prema. In the case like Ajamil, he got all his karmas destroyed. He came back to life. Then he did bhakti purely. Then he got prema. Then he went to Vaikuntha. So, and of course, for the devotee, the destruction of karma is just a secondary result. It's not even the goal. The main goal is to increase that bhakti until it becomes prema. That's our qualification for spiritual world.
What position liberation of the devotee attain?
What's that?
What position for liberation the devotee?
Well, in one sense, she's a Nityasiddha, so she's already got it. But in terms of pastimes, she performed jnana, yoga, bhakti, and she realized everything, but ultimately everything was kind of dovetailed to the bhakti. And so she got prema. But obviously she's Nityasiddha, so she already had prema. Hmm.
He was looking at this. When you think about Maharaj, what they think Shudra is the lowest, but it's something lower than that. So, what's the qualification for a Shudra as opposed to like that?
Okay. Yeah. Well, the Malachas, the Yavanas, they're outside. They're all the outcasts group. So the Sudra, at least, follows those rules for the Sudra, which are mentioned in Manusmriti. There's certain codes of conduct there for the Sudra, the Vaishya, the Kshatriya, and the Brahmana. So he follows that, and he has volunteered to take the authority of the king. He accepts the authority of that king. And the king, of course, is authorized descendant from Manu. So he is following the scriptural injunctions and just implementing them. So anyone who voluntarily agrees to follow those laws of Manu, then he would be, one of those categories in the Varna. And those that don't agree to follow that king, from, descendant of Bhanu, then they would be outside the system. Mhm.
What's your understanding? Seems just happened on that perspective.
Yeah. Well, maybe why it hasn't fructified is because maybe the instructions were not specific and clear enough. You can say varnashram, but what do you mean by that? Because just like a farm community itself is varnashram, it may be vaishyas, for instance, which is not all the varnas. So that's one thing. The other is that, is it for devotees or is it for the rest of the world? Which is very important thing to discuss. But if we do it for the devotees, how do we institute varnas and ashramas? Because technically the bhaktas are above the whole varnashram system. So why are we going backwards and putting ourselves into lower categories when we should be higher, as in the case here? He could do whatever the brahmana does, but he doesn't even do that because he's superior to the brahmana. So why are we putting ourselves back into brahminical duties or kshatriya duties when we're actually beyond that? So there's questions like that may occur. The other thing, of course, is that we're obviously not accepting varna by birth, so it's by qualification. But then who decides what your qualities are? And that's not quite clear. Also, in our system, we don't know who's going to be that person. The other point is, if you want a more complex varna ashram, then you have the king. But the king is an autocrat. Do we want an autocrat? Someone with absolute power? We'll say probably no. And if we got to do it for the rest of society, then definitely no one's going to agree to that, because it's democracy. So there's problems like this that are unsolved. The best we can do, of course, is everybody work according to their natural abilities, and somehow you have to figure out what your natural ability is, and then you find a suitable occupation for that, and at the same time do your devotional service. And of course, we do have to balance out whatever efforts we were put into so-called varnashram or modification of that. You have to balance it out very carefully so that the bhakti is never contaminated or minimized. So we have to have a very good balance there when we do that. The other, maybe the simplest way, is follow 4 regulated principles of chant Hare Krishna. That's all. So even that is very difficult, to do that for society, especially without all the other rules. That rule would be very difficult to establish in society in general. So I don't know how that's to be accomplished.
Attaining prema does not require
Yeah, well, yeah, for any bhakti, technically, no. It doesn't require diksha, but does require guru. Right? Right.
Maharaj, you mentioned that we should be treating our Shiksha Guru in the same level as we treat our Diksha Guru. And this, what if our Diksha Guru is our spiritual master? Then the Shastra it says that we treat our, I think it says, that we should be treating our spiritual master on the same platform as we do Krishna.
Yeah. So the same for the Shiksha Guru.
Same for the Shiksha Guru.
Yeah, which was, so how can we do that? We're treating everybody as God. But and it's not you have one Shiksha Guru, you have many Shiksha Gurus. So everybody becomes God. God. So what that means, of course, is we have to give great reverence for everyone. Obviously, we're not saying Guru is God, because then that's the opposite. It's not our Siddhanta to say that the jiva is God or anything like that. But we give great respect, obviously, to any guru, whether it's shiksha or diksha. But then there's also categories. So the diksha or shiksha guru could be of various levels. And at the higher spiritual level, then we're going to give more respect. The lower, we give less respect. So then there's various levels of respect, even in treating everybody as God or whatever. Still, we do have, like, levels.
in the natural instruction state, tongue and
Yeah.
other senses.
Yeah.
So there were times when I'm okay, not good, but I'm okay. I can control my mind. But there are times when I couldn't control it. Like not purposefully, but let's say in the morning, when I wake up, sometimes things happen. I'm not fully awake. Things just come out of my mouth. Or let's say if I'm sick or, like let's say I've worked like for 10 hours, it's like body aches and there, then the mind goes uncontrolled and then things happen. And then I started feeling guilty for like days and days. So what should I do?
Well, from the beginning of devotional service, as we progress, gradually we get more control over the senses and the mind and anger and all these things that mentioned in the nectar of instruction. It's not going to be immediate control of everything. So we're going through a stage called anartha vritti, or destruction of anarthas, which means all the unwanted things which are mentioned there, like lust, anger, greed, etc. It's not going to be perfect in the beginning. As you go on, we get more control, more control. And if we get to a level called nishta, which means steadiness, then the things are more or less under control. So maybe some problem, but much, much less. So we should at least aspire for that level of nishta, when we get much less problems.
There's one more question about this. So I aim to chant 16 rounds, but for example, after chanting 4 rounds or 5 rounds, my jaw gets tired. Then I take a break for 2 minutes. I drink a bit of a water and then I start again.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah, no problem.
That's okay.
Yeah. And for chanting the holy name, there's no real fixed rules. So if you have to take a rest, take whatever. If you have to interrupt a little bit. If there's various ways in which individual could do it, and it's not a problem.
Excuse me,
Mhm.
my last question, because Maharaj has got a very early flight tomorrow morning. I think, if anyone has got any last question, you can answer. Very tired. It's about right.
Sorry.
There's the question.
What happens if someone accepts the Kanishta by Guru and then later on the disciple realizes that yes, what should the disciple do?
What type of guru is it? Shiksha or Diksha? Or you can have a Kanishta Shiksha Guru, then you're going to get a Madhyama Shiksha Guru later on, and you could have an Uttama Shiksha Guru even. You could have many Shiksha Gurus. So it's not you only have one guru. If you have a Diksha Guru, then you're stuck with one, who may be a Kanishta, Madhyama, or Uttama, or whatever. But preferably, when we talk about Kanishta, for us, the Kanishta, if you look in the Bhagavatam definition, is not a real devotee. So technically, probably we wouldn't have a Kanishta. It would be a Madhyama, probably. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj will give